everybody. I'm Andrew from SewAndrew on Instagram and sewandrew.com, the blog. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own face mask. It's going to look like this. It has elastic for each side. It has a bit of wire on the top for shaping around your nose. It has these lovely little pockety gussets for opening up and covering your nose, chin and mouth. It fits nicely over the nose. Glasses can go over the top so that they don't steam up. It's the pattern that I prefer. I don't use a filter pocket on the inside. I find that flaps around, gets in my mouth too much. I also top stitch on the outside to help stop the layers from getting in my mouth while I'm talking. So that's what we're going to be making today. These are all things that you need to do it. You're going to need an iron and ironing board. You're going to need a ruler, a couple of rulers, maybe large one, small one, some kind of marking tool. I've got a chalk marker here, or an invisible pen, wash away pen. Don't need a pencil because I'm going to draft straight onto the fabric to save a bit of paper and save a bit of time. But if you are going to draft the pattern, draft that onto a separate piece of paper first, so you'll also need a pencil. And you'll need paper scissors if you're drafting your paper pattern, which I'm not doing. You'll need fabric scissors, some snips. I've got a point turner to help turning through later on, and I also have this, which I can't pick up. This is a piece of wire. I bought a pack of these on Amazon, and they go in to make the nose wire. But before I had these, I was using garden wire, the plastic coated stuff. This is 9 centimeters long, so if you're going to use garden wire, cut it to 11 centimeters and then just plier the ends over so it's down to 9 centimeters, and the ends aren't going to poke out and stab anyone. Little note actually, these don't seem to wash as well as the garden wire did, so when you're continually washing and wearing your masks, they may last a little longer with some sturdy garden wire in there. And so, now of course your sewing machine and your general sewing kit, handy little snips that were given to me by a very kind sewing friend. You know who you are. Thank you very much. I hope you are well. So let's move these out of the way for the meantime, and we will start making our pattern. As I mentioned earlier, I don't use a filter pocket flap, so I use 3 sheets of fabric. I've got my outer fabric and I've got 2 lining pieces here. So this is white cotton, it's folded over double, and this is a cotton chambray that's going to be my outer. I've got 1 layer of that. Now, if you're going to just make one of these at a time, draw it out onto your fabric straight away. If you're going to make lots of them, you'll want to cut out a pattern. The pattern will look like this, and you can cut out as many as you like. When you're layering the fabric up and cutting out, you may want to save time by layering it up so that the right side of your outer is facing the right side of your lining, and your filter lining is at the bottom. And then they're also, once they're cut out, they're the right orientation for sewing later on, so that will save you a little bit of time later on. My pattern's already here, but I'm going to show you how to draft it anyway. Got my measurements tucked under the corner here. So first of all, I'm going to draw a line 28 centimeters long towards the bottom of your fabric. Then we're going to mark up 19 centimeters. I'm using the squares on my ruler and the lines on my mat to help me keep that as square as possible. Measure across the top that it's still 28. And we've got ourselves a nice rectangle. You're going to measure in, take a smaller ruler, measure in the corners, 5.5 centimeters on each corner. .5 centimeters, and on each corner on the way up, the vertical and the horizontal lines. Now we're drafting this with seam allowance included. It's also multi-size. There, nearly finished. Once we've got these 5.5 centimetre markings, we're going to join them up in the diagonal. And your pattern is ready for cutting out. I'm going to put these away for now. I like to try to tidy up as I go. Take my big scissors and a couple of pins. Here we are. Just to make sure the fabric doesn't slip around. Cutting around just inside my chalk line. Now you may wonder, with a nice cutting mat like this, why I'm not doing it with a rotary cutter. You may prefer to, but you may or may not know that back in the real world, I'm a hairdresser and I love a pair of scissors. So I tried rotary cutters when I first started sewing, and I just never really got on with them. But if that's your preferred way, I'm not here saying it's right or wrong. Now the beauty of this video is, for the meantime, everything can go over there. Here we are, we've got everything cut out, and because we laid it all out in the right order to start with, it's also ready to sew. Now, if we'd have put these pins in at the right direction too, that would be ready to sew also. I'm going to take them out as we go along anyway, but I always like them at right angles to the seam. So, let's get rid of these for the meantime and bring the machine in. We are going to sew the short edge, the long edge and the short edge, leaving this end open, short edge, the long edge and the short edge, leaving this end open. And as I mentioned earlier, you've got 3 sizes built into one here. So if you want to make the large mask, sew your seams at 0.5 centimetre. If you want to make the medium size mask, sew your seams at 1 centimetre. And if you want to make a small mask, sew your seams at 1.5 centimetres. So I'm going to use 1 centimetre for the medium size. Fits me very nicely. And back stitch at the beginning and end of each piece. My pins aren't in the way, so I don't need to even take them out as I go. I'm leaving the needle down. I'm pivoting on the corners, nice sharp corners, maintaining my 1 centimetre seam allowance. Stop with the needle down, lift and pivot, 1 more stitch. Lift and pivot on to the end. Back stitch. Snip your threads, and there's your first side done. Now I'm lucky enough to have a beautiful machine on loan to me from Faf that will snip the threads for me itself. It will do so much more than that. If you want to read more about what it does, have a look at my blog at sewandrew.com. But for the meantime, I just need it to do some nice straight stitching. I am, of course, utilising that lovely built-in IDT system, which helps stop the fabric from shifting around, because I've got 3 layers under there, so it keeps it all nice and neat and tidy. Needle down to pivot the corners, and back stitch at the end. There we are. Thank you for the meantime, machine. We're going to snip these corners off before we turn it through. Obviously, be careful not to cut into your stitching. Snip those corners off nice and close, and you'll get a good turn through. Now, when you turn it through, make sure that you've got your hands going down the hole by the right side of your good fabric. You're going to get inside there. You've got 2 layers of lining on one side of outer on the other. Get your fingers all the way through. The easiest way to turn anything through is to go to the furthest away point, grab hold of that and pull it back through the hole. Get your fingers inside, poke those corners out, give them a little preliminary prod, and you can just run your finger along that long seam to help give it a pre-press. Run that along the seam. Next, take your point turner if you have one, get that in and give the corners an extra little poke. If you haven't got a point turner, you can use chopstick, knitting needle. You could use the point of your scissors if you're careful. What you want to do is poke a nice sharp corner without poking a hole through your fabric. There we are. Now, give it a little press with your fingers. Ideally, let's get rid of that ruler. We're going to iron this now, and as you iron it, you want to try and make sure that your lining stays hidden behind your outer fabric all the way across. It's only a mask, not a ball gown, so it doesn't really matter too much, but there it is. Let's see if my iron still has a bit of heat left in it. Steaming away, lovely. So, manipulate those corners slightly and give it a little press. And a little press. Once you've got it looking nice, hit it with a good bit of steam to keep it in place. So there's our mask pattern made up so far, a little bit of fluff. There it is. From the inside now, we're going to put some shaping in. We're going to fold up 5 centimetres. You can eyeball this. What you'll find is that there'll be about 1 centimetre left on the turn on each side. So that's about 5 centimetres. Give it a press and fold the top down, the same, about 5 centimetres. And give it a press. Done. You'll be pleased to know there's no more ironing. So now we get to the point where we're going to put our wire in. The wire is optional, but I really find it helps shaping over your nose, especially if you're wearing glasses. It helps to stop the steam getting up. So you're going to position it just in the top here. It doesn't matter which is top or bottom, but once you put this in, it will matter which is top or bottom. You could put one in the bottom as well to help shape under the chin if you needed to, but if you make the right size, that won't be necessary. So we slide it in anywhere. If I can get hold of that, there we are. We slide it in between the outer and either one of the linings, it doesn't matter which, and you position it in amongst this seam allowance, just in the middle, so you've got a few centimetres spare either side. If you want to be really diligent, you can pop a pin in to help hold it in place, and if you really want to go for it, you can mark where the ends are, so that you make sure you don't sew over them. And you can feel where those ends are too, so you shouldn't sew over them. But just to be on the safe side, hey. Bring the machine back in. And we're going to sew a little box with wire in place. I'm going to slow the machine down, but I am going to go up to a 3.5mm millimetre top stitch length. Needle down, here we go. Back stitching and finish with the needle down. Pivot and turn, make sure that you're going to clear your piece of wire and it's tucked nicely up against the seam allowances as you sew along. I'll take my pin out. And sew all the way up to the mark on the other side. Needle down, lift and pivot. Finish off the end of the casing with a little bit of back stitching, as much as you like, because you want this to be nice and strong. There it is, you've got your nose wire safely tucked in. Now we're going to go back to these seams that we creased earlier. Flip one of them up, and from the top you're going to sew just 5 millimetres along the edge of that crease, holding it in place. Speed up a little, a nice straight line here, and a clear 5mm marking on my foot plate. Don't really need to backstitch at the end because the end of these seams are going to get caught in one of the other seams later on. That one's stitched, flip the other one in and stitch that in place too. And our mask is coming along nicely. Now it's time to put the elastic in. So you've cut roughly 60 centimetres. You're going to cut that in half. So you've got two pieces, around 30 centimetres. If you're making lots of these at once, it's quite nice to cut 60 centimetres all in one go, but cut them in half as you go, and then you know if you've missed a few mils here and there, at least each pair is going to be the same length, so you stand a much better chance of them fitting evenly over the ears. So keep that one very safe. This is the one we are going to use. I'm going to lay the mask over the sewing machine bed. See if I can put this over here and show you a little better. Here we are. So we go. Centimetre fold. Elastic in. Another centimetre fold, about 3 centimetres showing. I'm going to bring this, that's why I do it on the machine, so it's all here. The elastic isn't getting caught anywhere. So I spin this around, pop it underneath the machine. Now, you've got quite a lot of fabric to sew through, so to give you a helping hand to start off with, start a good centimetre or so down the seam, pop your needle in, start sewing, then immediately go back to the beginning of the seam and then carry on. So we go a couple of stitches, back to the beginning, and then carry on to the end. A back stitch, and we're done. And so, I like to sew it from this side, so it does mean that your bobbin stitch is the one that's showing, so you might want to snip your threads up and keep them tidy, because that'll be showing on the outside. I'll do that now with my little threads. Snips. Much better. Tie your ends off, ready for fitting. Got the other side to go. I'm going to fold that first centimetre, lay the elastic over it, fold the next centimetre, turn it around, start centimetre or so down, and head backwards, and on we go. So that's the side sewn. As I said, your bobbin thread is the one that's showing on the outside, so just check underneath that that's nice and neat, and before you lose these ends, tie a knot in them. Don't tie it too tight, you want to check for fitting later. Starting to look more and more like a mask. Now we're going to put the shaping in. I do this on the machine bed as well. I'll show you here first. This little corner is going to fold to this corner, over to there, and then this underneath corner is going to fold to this corner. That's my iron beeping in the background, over to there. And then you're going to stitch along there to hold the shaping in. So let's do this under the machine so everything's nice and flat. One corner and the other corner. Again, starting just a centimetre down into the seam. So I've got a good purchase before I backstitch. And, oh, wrong button. And then backstitch at the end. New machine, I'm still learning where all the buttons are. And there's one side finished with the shaping in. Let's do the other side. So let's put it all down nice and flat and neat. Make sure the elastic's out the way. Corner to the corner, corner to the corner. Here we go. And there we have it. Snip your final threads off. Tie it up as you go along. Nose wire at the top. Let's see how it goes. And wouldn't you know it, a perfect fit. And the glasses over the top nice and comfortably, no fogging up. If you've made a cotton one like this one, you can wash and wear it as many times as you like. The only issue may be, depending on the strength of your wire, but as I mentioned earlier, plastic coated garden wire with the ends bent over 1 centimetre, nice and sturdy, goes through many washes. Thank you, Sewists, for watching my first sew along on YouTube. Please do click on the button and subscribe. There'll be more videos coming along. Stay safe and happy sewing. Bye bye.